Welcome to episode 71 of the ODDCast, and Topher is joining me from the US. We've got a big show today. There's a lot to talk about. A lot is happening across the world, most notably One Nation and all of the controversy around that right now, what's happening in the polls, what's happening since Gina spoke at a conference. Then we're going to talk about massive changes in the US via their Supreme Court rulings and what this might mean for the country itself. And then we're going to discuss the Streisand effect of the movie Citizen Vigilante, what it means for all of us who are kind of going, yeah, this is kind of inevitable, right? So guys, as always, grab your drink, strap in. It is time for another episode of the ODDCast.
Well, it's great to be with you, Tim. Thank you so much for having me on your show. Sorry, Carly, it's you. I forgot. Sorry.
You upgraded.
Look, I didn't want to brag, but I will say that you and your set and like the camera and the color and the lens and how you present is much more appealing. I will give you that. You've got that. But yes, I've now been on the Tim Pool show. Hang on, my OCD can't handle it. There we go. I've been on Tim Pool's show now. And it's funny because it's a room full of people who really understand what it is that they do. And so you're sitting in a room that feels effortless. And they've each just got their little screens in front of them. This is pre-show. And then even during the show, they've got their little screens and some of them are on their phones. And up the end, there's a few other people that you don't really see on the cameras. And they'll just suddenly pop up and one of them will just say, Tim, I've sent you the thumbnail. Let me know what you think. And you realize that the reason he stood up and took a photo of me earlier was because he was getting my shot for the thumbnail, and he's constructed the thumbnail around the topics, which were literally decided about 20 minutes earlier. And he's got the picture from me, and I walked into the room maybe 10 minutes ago, and the thumbnail's done. During the show, it was so funny, and apologies to anyone that watched the show and is now having to watch me talk about the show. It was so funny. So we went down rabbit holes and had a bit of fun. It was tough in the early part for me because obviously Tim does the news of the day. That's his thing. People tune in because they want to get his thoughts on what happened today or maybe over the weekend. The unfortunate thing for me was the big story was a bunch of Supreme Court rulings, US Supreme Court, not my wheelhouse. But of course, I've got no control over that, and that's not Tim trying to be mean. That's just him, like he's doing his job, and he's got me as the guest, and it was just a bit of a mismatch. But I sort of did my best, and I took on the role of asking intelligent, or I think intelligent questions. So I didn't try to know anything. I was trying to just ask probing questions that got better, stuff out of them. And then we hit on Venezuela because if I'm involved, we are going to talk about Venezuela. I'm not getting through a damn podcast without talking about Venezuela. And of course, he's been there. He went there when he was covering protest movements and so forth all over the place. And Venezuela was one of the places he went to, and we really kind of connected on that. And then from there, I felt like actually I relaxed a little bit, and the topics were a bit more favorable to me. And I really felt like actually I had a really enjoyable podcast, and I think I did all right. But while we're podcasting, somehow the issue of intellectual property coming out of copyright comes up. And while we're podcasting, Tim goes and he gets whichever AI he uses, I'm not sure which, to go and look at a bunch of Nancy Drew books, the ones that are out of copyright specifically, because obviously that happens progressively, and to write him a new Nancy Drew novel based around the style. And one of the other guys is just working away on a cover for him. And he's assured me that he's actually serious and he's going to go ahead and do this. And people who've watched the episode will know he did say on the episode, like, I'm doing this. He's borrowed Ian Crossland, one of his co-hosts' name, to be the author on the cover, because he was like, well, if I put Tim Pool as the author on the cover, it's going to be like, people will say I only sold lots of copies because it was my name on it. So he's just grabbed one of the other guys' names that he's sticking on there. And it's like, yeah, I'm just going to drop a chunk of money advertising this thing. My one little contribution was I said, you should headline it and do all of the AI books that you do as Nancy Drew, headline them as this sort of collection of lost manuscripts. And that's kind of the justification for so it's the Lost Manuscript series or whatever it is. That's just the name. That's just the name of the series. It doesn't mean anything. And he loved that idea. And so I'm actually really looking forward to it. But it was just hilarious because I'm in a room, I'm having some great conversations with some genuinely interesting people. And there's Carter down the end working on the graphics as well as doing some of the audio mixing, etc. There's someone in the corner doing stuff. Ian and I are chatting, and I just can't remember the name of the guy that was next to me. I regret that, but it just didn't stick for whatever reason. And there's Tim Pool just working away on an AI written Nancy Drew novel that he is legitimately putting up on Amazon to sell, and he will throw money behind ad spend on it for the explicit purpose of just proving his point that it can be done. And it was just so interesting to just be in this room of effortless competence, like this effortless kind of productivity that was just happening around you, and it was so natural between them. So yeah, it was really, really fun. Being on there was awesome. Being in the room and watching it all happen was actually so much better than what I expected.
Well, in the spirit of Tim Pool, you probably saw this. After he rants, he then says, guys, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the show if you haven't already, tell everyone about it, and if you want to support it, you can jump on to Ko-fi, you can sign up, be a member, join the Discord.
You're starting to sound like you actually have a plan.
Yeah.
Where we're going, we don't need plans, Carly.
We don't need plans, but we definitely need support.
we do need support. You're not wrong. So let's do the grift. There's Ko-fi in the corner, and that's how you can support the Oddcast directly. There's a range of merch at topherfield.com, including Oddcast merch, by the way. We do have an Oddcast shirt.
I do want to bring this up because we don't actually talk about it very often. So let me just bring this up. So guys, if you want to support the Oddcast, if you like what we do, it is really awesome when you guys get behind us on either Ko-fi, but we also have this bad boy. So I'm just bringing it up now. Where are we? Merch.
So you know those ads while you're bringing that up, you know those ads where it's like if you buy from a big box store or supermarket, whatever, no one really cares. When you buy from the small creator on Etsy or whatever, they do the happy dance, and like banks have done, sort of ads themed around that. It is true. Like when the phone dings and I look at the notification, I'm like, oh, someone's jumped on the store. They bought a T-shirt, they bought a book, they bought a hoodie and a couple of things. That is genuinely a nice little moment. So guys, we do appreciate, we do need, and we do appreciate the support. That's what keeps us independent. That's what allows us to not experience things like audience capture, which we talk about a lot on this show, because we're not beholden in that same way. It's this funny thing, because we depend on our audience for our income, we're not beholden to our audience. And that sounds counterintuitive, but it's actually going to be really relevant to a story we're covering in a minute, all about One Nation and some of the accusations flying around about the pages, the One Nation support pages, etc. So we'll get to that. But once you owe your audience to an advertiser, then your audience size matters to a whole new degree. So, Carly and I might something controversial might come up, and Carly and I go, hey, if we say what we actually believe on this issue, we're going to lose a bunch of audience. And we would look at each other and go, okay, then we're going to lose a bunch of audience. Anyway. That's right. But if we've got an advertiser signed up and our contract says that we have to generate X eyeballs per month, then all of a sudden losing a bunch of audience becomes a breach of contract issue for us. And now all of a sudden we're at a much higher risk of audience capture, because we can't say that, because what about the audience? And so there is a liberation that comes. Yes, we're financially on the hook if people decide they hate me and they all leave, or people don't buy stuff, whatever. But there's a level of freedom and there's a level of honesty that comes with that. So I'm trying to preserve that for as long as I possibly can. I'm learning a lot while I'm in the US, and I'm realizing why they all do it. I'm realizing why they all have show sponsors, they all have advertisers. The confidence of income, the certainty of revenue becomes necessary if you're going to build a team. And I don't know whether my model can survive much longer. I hope to be proven wrong, but I'm starting to think that sort of the air of inevitability of having to switch and adopt the other model, because I need to grow my team. I'm a massive bottleneck in this business. I've been on the road over here and my productivity has fallen off a cliff. And sometimes it falls off a cliff even when I'm at home, just because life gets busy. I've got 3 kids or whatever it may be. And that's a real problem. I'm a huge bottleneck in this. And in order to fix that, I need a much bigger team, and I need a team that's working with me face to face in Albury. And in order to bankroll that, all of a sudden that's where that model comes in. And I'm really struggling with this. I'm learning. I'm a sponge. I'm learning. I'm watching. I'm talking to an enormous number of people, and I've got this sinking feeling in my gut that there's an air of inevitability about having to change to that model. unless we can start to sell a lot more merch, a lot more books, a lot more t-shirts, a lot more hoodies, more coffee donations. If we can start, and we've got a restock coming, everybody. So I've seen your messages about, we're out of this size, we're out of that size. I know Carly's worked really hard. She's put in an order for a restock on all the existing designs and some new stuff coming as well. That's right. So we're plugging those gaps, we're plugging those holes. And if that works spectacularly well, then I'll keep this model going for as long as I possibly can. But what I'm learning, what I'm seeing while I'm here in the US and sitting in those rooms is I get it now. I get why they all run that model.
There's a couple of things that are worth talking about with this, because obviously we've had the whole Carlz Stefanovic thing blow up, and it's still on everyone's lips. Everyone's still talking about it. But before we go into Carl, I think it's really important because what is that? Popcorn?
Butter popcorn.
Oh.
Just explaining why you can hear the sound of me chewing.
Right, got you. What time is it there?
Evening. It is 9 o'clock in the evening.
It is 12 o'clock and I'm still having my coffee.
Obviously, this is hey, we can all see that that's Bailey's in milk. You're having a lunch cap, not a nightcap.
Yeah, see, the whole thing where I talk about not being I don't drink is actually just a psyop. I'm a blazing alcoholic.
Yeah, you don't drink water. You're just not completing the sentence. Yeah.
Oh, I needed that. This is that. Do you know this should be a sponsor for the show? Because I drink so much of it. It's called First Press Coffee. You just get it at Carlz or Woolies. It's like cold drink.
I've seen it. Yeah, I don't mind it.
I top it up with cow's milk.
Okay, I wish it was stronger. But then again, I wish that with all of them. There aren't any that are, in my view, strong enough for me.
I drink too much coffee, so I don't need it stronger, because then I'd still drink the same amount and I'd be...
Back to the Carlz Stefanovic thing.
So I just want to finish my thought on this. So this is happening a lot on, and this is going to be part of a big conversation as we come into the One Nation stuff, but this is something that I wish our audience, or I think our audience does understand, but it's worth prefacing with. When you get into independent media, you're already battling against, what's out there. It's a content creation thing. It's a numbers game. It's, I was saying this about my own audience. I've now got almost 95,000 on Instagram, right? Which is
wow, that's amazing.
So
good. Yeah.
But now there's this expectation from my audience, because they love it, right? They're like, we want a reel every day. And I just don't have the time. It's 3 hours per reel, which sounds crazy for 3 minutes, but that's what it takes.
Yeah.
And there's like, I want you to talk about this thing. When are you going to react to this one? And so I know it's coming from a good place. I'm not complaining. There's a level of expectation now. And because when you become a bigger account, people expect you to, lay the law down and be like, right, I am ready to speak on this issue.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
No disrespect. A lot of the issues I'm genuinely not interested in. They're not things I would talk about. And I understand
I would say that about the things that you talk about. This is one of the funny things about us is and you go really well. You talk about it on Instagram, which I think is the right platform for you as a primary platform. And you talk about a lot of the culture stuff that I'm like, Carly, I can't even, Carly. I can't even, don't. But they do really well for you. And yet you're sitting there talking about other topics. Like I'm not going to touch that. It's just funny. You've got your wheelhouse and I've got mine.
Well, and you make a really good point, because that's why you go to certain people. And I don't think you want one person to speak on all topics, because I'll tell you guys this, it's impossible. Like I have people sending me stuff all the time. Have you seen this? I'm like, so someone asked me something about what's the US military base in Australia?
Well, it's Pine Gap is the most sort of, that's the intelligence base in the center, but they've got other stuff on the periphery.
No, it was definitely Pine Gap. Someone mentioned something about Pine Gap. I can't even remember what it was. And they're like, do you know about this? And I was like, I know this much. Literally nothing about it at all. I knew of Pine Gap. That's where my intelligence stops with it. And they're like, how can you not know this? I'm like, bro, I'm one person with a small amount of time.
So I first encountered this, 10 years ago. And this was really early in the podcasting thing. It started to happen. And people genuinely would send me messages and would be shocked to discover that I didn't spend all of my time consuming everybody else's content. And keep in mind, back then I was working in the film industry, and I had a full-time job. I was recently married. I'd taken a full-time job to help sort of pay the bills while we're early in our marriage. And I made videos genuinely on the side. I was making perhaps a video every second month. back at that time. And people would be shocked and disappointed. They'd be like, oh, I expected better from you, because I hadn't watched every single episode of Joe Rogan and, what's it, Alex Jones and like, you don't watch all of them? No. I have a life, a wife, at that point, one kid, and I make content on the side. Anyway, we're talking about ourselves too much. We need to talk about what's happening with One Nation.
Well, no, I want to talk about the Carlz Novick thing, before we get into that, because obviously this all happened when you're in when you're in the UK. He put up a podcast.
I was so hopeful. I was so hopeful of getting a podcast with him, because we were both in London at the same time. But my phone was everywhere. I was messaging people who were at the same conference as me, and my messages weren't being received by them. And then sometimes they were. So he replied to me once, and then he didn't reply to me again. And I don't know if he just got busy, and because that obviously that turned into a shit show for him. So it could just be that he got busy and it just wasn't on the table, or it could be that he just didn't get the messages. I don't know. So sadly, I missed out on what would have been a real scoop of an interview.
Well, so the whole thing with Carl, and guys in the audience, please let us know what you think. But this is my opinion. Before anything came out, I said, this is deliberate on his behalf. He wanted out. That was my take. Rukshan and I talked about it on an episode the week before. And I said, I definitely think that he wanted out and he knew this would help. And then he put up the whole thing, I'm free. I think people underestimate, mainstream media is dying. The model itself is dying, because we have diluted attention across so many different channels, so many different platforms. And it's really hard now for advertisers to go, I'm going to spend, $2 million a year with Channel 9 because they get all the attention. They don't. And so I'm sure you guys already know this, but the main revenue for these news stations is ads. So if that revenue is not coming in from the ads, they can't pay the big prices for the co-host anymore. So a lot of that stuff that used to be like 20 years ago, Carl was probably on crazy money, and that would be dwindling because the model is changing. But further to that, the heads of Channel 9, the heads of Channel 7, there's a lot of foreign investment in these corporations now, which means there's people behind the scenes doing the strings. And Channel 10 is a great example. They're owned by Paramount, very left-leaning, which is why most of Channel 10 is very woke. And Channel 9 titters on that.
But even the ones that aren't, so take your Fox News. This is, what is it, Murdoch? That's the Murdoch family owned, and they still fired Tucker Carlson, and this is before he went the way he's gone. They fired him as the highest rating talk show host in human history, because he was upsetting their pharmaceutical company advertisers. So even they don't even have to be left-leaning institutions in order to be beholden in that way.
No, of course. And so with Carl, right? So this is something I just want to get on the record, and I think you agree with me on this. I understand that Carl wasn't on our side during COVID. I get that.
100%. Yep.
You and I have both said this countless times, and I want to just repeat it again. If you are unwilling to forgive people in any capacity, we're going to end up very lonely. And this comes down to my whole crabs in the bucket thing, right? Oh, but you didn't stand up this time. You weren't there. You did this. You're becoming so exclusionary. You'll eventually start turning on the handful of people that are around you. And that's already happening with One Nation over the Israel-Palestine thing. And I don't want to go to that yet, but the whole crabs in a bucket thing, Carl has released himself from the shackles, if you will, of mainstream media. 100%. So has Dave Hughes. And so has Kyle Sandilands.
Kyle Sandilands,
Right? And these are men for 20 years who have been at the forefront of broadcasting, entertainment. They were in the top dollar. They're household names, right? You don't have to like them. I'm just saying they're household names. And now all of a sudden, watch the media around those three names. They're grifters. They're washed up. They're dried up.
I'm loving the fact that they're playing the race and gender card in relation to all three of them. They're putting the three pictures up side by side, and that's right. These white old men. As if, so the implication is, well, number one, we should celebrate their downfall. So this is a downfall. Firstly, we have to accept that premise. And I think that's going to prove to be very, very premature. Secondly, there's this implicit idea that they succeeded because they were, white men, right? And that they were kind of enabled in that way. And the realization needs to be that even under the old model of broadcast TV with all the gatekeepers and everything else, they were still ultimately, their revenue model was they sold eyeballs to advertisers. And so they were very sensitive to what did the eyeballs want on their screens. And guess what the eyeballs wanted? White males as anchors. The statistics prove this conclusively. And so they simply did what was in their best commercial interest. And so you end up with Carl Sandilands, who, by the way, I find quite disagreeable. Like I don't listen to him and I don't like him. But he became the number one, talk radio shock jock. You had Carl Stefanovic, you sort of one of your most popular, I don't know if he was number one, but in his time slot, most popular TV anchor and host. You got Dave Hughes. I don't know if he's ever been number one in anything, but he's certainly an icon of the Australian comedy industry.
Hughesy and Kate, that breakfast radio show.
Actually, they were, actually, you're right. Yeah. And it's like the audience chose this. This isn't because racism at an institutional level and Channel 9 and Channel 10 and blah, blah, blah have been discriminating. No, audiences chose these people. And so what the institutions want to believe is if they ostracize these people out of the institution, then the audiences will stop choosing them.
Yeah.
But they're famous because the audience chose them, not because the network chose them. Excuse me.
Have some water, mate. Have some water. We've got to get through a couple more hours.
We've got a lot to get through now. I want to get specific about Carl's because we can't get away from Carl Stefanovic right now. So his advertisers have stood by him.
Yeah.
Now, this is a really interesting moment because we haven't seen someone get tested in the Australian market and have their advertisers stand by them like this. So what was it? Western Ringers or something? The country clothing mob.
No, to be honest, I couldn't tell you.
I hope that's the right company. I see their stuff around. I live in Albury, so I see their stuff around from time to time. But they've stood by him and said, "Yeah, we like him. We're not going to pull our sponsorship just because he interviewed a controversial figure. Like the dude's a journalist. Yes, he's now an independent journalist, but he's a journalist. And I'm sorry,
Sorry, just the controversial thing. Like, sure, okay, Tommy Robertson's controversial, but isn't that a journalist's job? Like, what's his
100%.
name? Piers Morgan used to go and interview serial killers, and they didn't cancel Piers Morgan for interviewing child killers or pedophiles. What's his name? The notorious pedophile in Australia. Liz Hayes went and interviewed him overseas. They've interviewed.
I couldn't even tell you.
Bloody hell, what's his name? Ivan Milat.
I was going to say, Chopper, etc. Like, all these
controversial. Like, what about them?
Yeah. So what the reason why the outrage is there is because he's actually dangerous to the establishment powers that be.
Yes.
That's actually why they're outraged, not because of anything else. Now, I was at the art conference, and no, I will tell you privately, Carly, what went down. I never saw ARC in London, but I saw what was happening around. Sorry, I never saw ARC. I never saw Carl in London.
Yeah.
But I saw what was happening. And what was happening entered the ARC room. There's a lot of Australians there. And it was very interesting. But I'm just thinking through.
Let's answer me this. Was it a ScoMo moment?
Not at all. It was the opposite. It was the opposite. Every single person that I'm aware of was on Carl's side as a matter of instinct. It wasn't even a question.
Yeah.
In addition to that, so you will have noticed that the interview had been saved by other people.
Yeah, of course.
And was re-uploaded. Now, in the end, it was One Nation that re-uploaded it. I can tell you that if One Nation hadn't re-uploaded it, there would have been about a dozen people who would have re-uploaded it themselves. And they didn't get it from a single person. They all went and got it. It spread like wildfire. That all of a sudden the rumor was out. Channel 9 were hitting back. He might be forced to take that down, and people are just literally. I'm watching them on their laptops, and they're up on like the YouTube downloading websites, and they're just using the URL and just ripping this thing off the internet as quick as they could. So they were literally at the art conference. I could name. I'm not going to, and that's why I realized. Oh, hang on, I shouldn't really talk about this in any detail, but I could name 6 different people who had a copy on their hard drive within 25 minutes of the first rumors breaking. Like it was incredible to watch. And I'm mindful, it's an entirely different situation, but I'm mindful of the moment I got arrested during COVID. And I'd written a series of instructions for my wife to follow, and she had to call these people and do these things based on, you know, what had happened. And she ended up never having to call any of them because they all came out of the woodwork and started calling my phone, which I'd left at home. And just watching people get around. I've got my kids around with me, so if you can hear them, I'm sorry. And so watching that happen, I never saw that, of course, but I felt like I was on the other side of it now. And I was watching, it was a whole totally different thing, but the establishment were coming for Carl, and I was watching the organic reaction of the other people rallying towards him. And I was like, I'm being given the privilege of seeing the other side of what I didn't get to see last time. And of course, I'm not the object of it this time, and I'm grateful for that. But I got to see the other side. That's what it looks like on the other side when the news breaks and people just rally instinctively. And it's actually a really beautiful thing. But how Channel 9 thought that they were going to succeed in making that interview disappear, how they thought that there was going to be anything other than the Streisand effect as a result of this, it just boggles my brain.
And the other thing is too, like I was reading a lot of reactions from people saying, "Oh, you know, he's fucked up now," and all, like
no.
on both sides of the political aisle. I'm like, this is a veteran of broadcast television. He's not an idiot, and this is something that actually really infuriates me. And we're going to talk about this later. But the average intelligence is quite low because people think that people don't have any consideration past the action of posting the video. I'm like, you don't think he thought about this? You don't think he went out of his way to find Tommy Robinson? Like, of course this is calculated. Of course this is measured. Of course people have had conversations. What would happen? How does this work? Of course Carl has read his bloody employee contract. Of course he would piss off. Like, you know, so when I saw all the reactions online, I was sort of like, guys, this is a nothing burger. He wanted out. He understands the power of having his own platform and being untethered. So does Kyle. So does Dave Hughes. They're not has-beens. These are people who for 20 years were able to hold our eyeballs or, you know, our ears. They're not stupid. But you're going to see the left, unfortunately, because obviously they're outside the progressive echo chamber, of course come and attack them because they're off the leash.
So can I add another layer to what you said? Of course, they've had the conversations. Of course, they've thought about it, etc. There comes a point in time where you don't have to have had the specific conversations in order to be ready for that action. Once you've had a number of these sorts of conversations, you know, once you're, you know, I'm 17 years into this space myself. The first attempt to cancel me came in 2012, right? I've seen a bit. I've been around. You know, and so then when, for example, the mob came for you during COVID, you know, you ended up ringing me, and I had the privilege of helping. I'm not going to claim credit for it. You did the work to get yourself through that, but I had the privilege of kind of being on the sidelines there and kind of coaching you a little bit. I didn't have to think through anything. You were experiencing a much more intense and a much more personal version of something that I'd experienced gentler versions of multiple times over the years. Carl Stefanovic didn't need to think through what might happen if he interviewed Tommy Robinson. He's been around this game for long enough, and he's learned how to tap dance. And so when somebody changes the tune, changes the rules, changes the tempo or the time signature of the music without warning him in advance, he just adapts, and he doesn't have to have thought about it. And that's something that I think a lot of people really underestimate, that 10,000 hours rule. It doesn't just mean that, you know, you're familiar with the 10,000 hours thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't just mean that you're really good at doing X, Y, Z. It means that you're really good at handling the exceptions, handling the problems, handling the challenges that can get thrown your way.
There's another version of that now, sorry. It's 10,000 hours to get good at the craft, and it's another 10,000 hours to understand how to leverage it and how to use it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so that's learning the business side of the business. Yeah, okay, interesting. All right, we do need to move on to some of the news, though. We've kind of touched on a bunch of the stories already, but we do need to actually get into it.
So the whole Kyle thing is really interesting, right? Because you've got him, Carl Sandlands.
Carl Sandlands, right? Okay, yeah.
So it's Kyle, Carl, and Dave Hughes. They're all obviously now speaking out. These are all people who you maybe would have positioned as centre left, maybe. Dave Hughes was obviously a bit more progressive.
Left, yeah.
And the reason I bring these three up is you watch the media reaction to these three talking about it. And of course, everyone's like, oh, they're washed up, they're old men, they're grifters. Isn't it interesting? And there's a really cool thing here that I think is really worth taking note of. The second you no longer are in the echo chamber, any kind of thought outside of it is condemned. So we don't want inclusivity. We don't want diversity. We want acquiescence. That's what we want.
It's monoculture.
100%. And so it's so interesting to me hearing these people on the progressive side.
Nothing.
Monoculture,
I just used the Pauline Hanson scandal thing. Wow.
I got it, but I was getting there myself.
I'm so underappreciated. Continue.
The way these people frame of how it's important to have all these diverse opinions and diverse thoughts and whatever, just not the ones that disagree with them.
Yeah,
so
that's
Hannah Ferguson, I brought her up before, right?
Cheek media, yeah.
She blocked me after saying she would have a robust discussion with me.
I'm pretty sure we need to add her to the drinking game. I think she's earned a place in the drinking game, yeah.
Well, so she's blocked me, and it's interesting. I put up a reel about it, and I wasn't nasty. I just said, you guys say that you know what? You haven't watched a reel for a while. Do you want to watch it? Let's do it.
Sorry. Do I want to watch it? What a waste of words. Why would you even ask if I want to watch one of your reels?
I think you're going to appreciate this, because this goes into the One Nation thing, because a lot of the commentary at the moment is around, why is One Nation rising? It's bots. Apparently, according to a Green senator, it's bots.
We'll get to that story. I really should have brought something stronger than water to this episode. I regret my life. I regret my life decision. All right.
Let's bring this up, because I think this is about One Nation. I think you'll appreciate it. All right, here we go.
Facing a real crisis in Australia where we're going to shame everyone who's voted differently to us, and we're not going to be able to convince anyone of anything if we aren't willing to reach across the aisle right now and start having better conversations politically.
I guess that's why she blocked me then. The massive surge in support for One Nation has people outraged, and almost every piece of commentary about it is avoiding the most obvious explanation. So let's talk about it. We're all looking at the same polls and seeing Pauline Hanson everywhere, and yet depending on where you already sit politically, your explanation is predetermined. If you lean progressive, you will assume the country has simply turned racist and the evil fascists are coming out of the woodwork. If you lean right, you'll understand that ordinary people are fed up and just want a bit of common sense. Both conclusions are reached long before anyone is brave enough to cross the divide and have a genuine discussion, because that would take a bit of effort. Hannah Ferguson from Cheek Media blocked me after telling me she was keen to have an honest chat in the comments, all while posting videos about how we need to have more robust discussions across the political divide. Not sure how blocking me achieves that, Hannah, but truthfully, it was expected. For more than a decade, the people most eager to remind us that they are morally superior and that they simply know better have been the same ones demanding we get censored, shamed, and cancelled and deplatformed because we're outside their progressive echo chamber. Think about the voice referendum. Anyone leaning towards no, or who simply wanted to ask a harder question about how it would work, was branded a racist. The polls and commentary treated a yes as a foregone conclusion, right up until the part where the Australian public quietly returned a resounding no vote. All the people who had kept their reservations to themselves turned out to be the majority all along, and yet you still called them racist for using our democratic processes to have their say. Economist Tamer Kuran has a name for what happens next. He calls it a preference falsification. Once the social cost of saying what you actually think grows too high, people stop saying it. Not because they change their minds, but because they go silent out of safety, and the progressives mistake that silence for agreement. When the cost of speaking up drops, the fringe turns out to have been a great many people all along, and that is the silent majority. Notice how selectively the gate is policed? When Carl Stefanovic started giving airtime to people outside the leftist echo chamber, or Dave Hughes lost patience with the government, suddenly they were fascist adjacent, elitist, and boy, are people seizing the content creation opportunity here to preach about how these men are a problem to be managed. Then there's the money. When Gina Rienhart, a woman no less, puts her fortune behind a cause, the headline headline is "Billionaires are buying our democracy." But when Simon Holmes of Court pours money into the Teal movement, or Mike Cannon-Brookes spends big trying to reshape our energy market, the very same act becomes community-minded and principled and a triumph of civic spirit. The wealth isn't the problem, it's just the direction it's flowing. Money and success can be virtues so long as you bend the knee to the approved progressive view. So the One Nation surge actually makes a lot of sense. You were told why for years by the very people you refused to hear, and in my case blocked. It was always coming. The only real mystery is why you would ever believe the silence meant you'd won. So everyone's shocked about One Nation, yet they don't want to talk to the people who are talking about it.
Can I just say that was a lovely velvet glove that you put around that iron fist that you just sunk into Hannah Ferguson there. It was very, very nicely done. Preference falsification is exactly what I've spoken about, that my wife and I saw in 2016 when we were in the US before Trump was elected for the first of his...
saying, I thought we were going to Venezuela. I'm like, we've heard it. We know it.
Yeah, no, I don't want people to get liver poisoning. No, so we were in the US 2016 before the election, the first of Trump's 3 election wins. And it was very, very obvious to us that Trump was going to win, not because everyone was telling us that they were going to vote for Trump, but because the people that were going to vote for Hillary Clinton would find a way to work it into the conversation. I've made this joke before, but it was like they were vegans, like they just would find a way to tell you. But then lots of people wouldn't talk about politics at all. And then we would play the dumb tourist card. And they would literally, and I'm not making this up, would be in a diner somewhere, and it's nice and quiet and a lot of people, and it's a nice server who's being very bubbly, as they do, because they want the tips. And would say, look, what's this thing with the election? What do you think? Like, we're from Australia, we don't know anything. And they would actually do a head check. They'd just double check that no one else was in their baffles and could hear them before they would lean in and say, well, actually, I'm thinking I might vote for Donald Trump. And what that told us was preference falsification. All of the polls are going to be lying, because the people that are going to vote for Hillary Clinton will stay on the line and answer the questions. The people that are thinking they might vote for Donald Trump are going to hang up the phone if they even answered in the first place. So all of the points that you made there are spot on, and they're very, very important in the light of one of the big stories from this last week, which is the claim. So we'll get to the polls in a minute because they're important, and I've got a lot to say on the polls. But I want to deal with this. There has been a big study and an analysis that has revealed that a number of the big One Nation supporter pages are actually run by admins who are not in Australia, and they appear to be being run as for-profit eyeball harvesting operations. Now, it was The Guardian that did a really good write-up on this, and I've got a bunch of screenshots that I'm going to be using in a video that I was meant to record today, but today went to crap. So I'll hopefully recording that one first thing tomorrow. Hang on. If I go into here, I should be able to get the link. Just give me one sec. I'll bring it up on screen. It's actually a good Guardian article. It's extraordinary. I know. I scarcely believed it myself. But it's actually a good Guardian article. And they don't make false claims on the basis of this research. But a lot of people have grabbed the Guardian article and the research, and they are making a bunch of false claims. And so we need to kind of untangle the truth from the fiction here. All right, I've got this ready to go. Let me do a little screen share here. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit of this. Just make sure you can see that. No, you can't. Now you can. All right. So pro-One Nation Facebook groups appear to be run by foreign meme factories that monetize content. That's the honest take. So good on The Guardian. They had the chance to have a big swipe at One Nation, and they actually chose honesty instead. So essentially what they've found, there's a couple of really glaring examples that they give. So, some groups appear to be long-standing and set up by genuine supporters. So they're not trying to say that every One Nation support group is fake. The majority are full of content overwhelmingly fed by what digital media researcher Timothy Graham said appear to be a foreign-run, predominantly Indonesian for-hire engagement farm operation. Notice they're not pushing the Russia hoax, misinformation, foreign influence type of line, which they could have done. They could have run with that, but that would have been dishonest. And this is why I think they really do deserve credit here. I actually think they've gone out of their way to be quite honest about what they're actually claiming to be the case here. Now, there are some like absolute smoking guns in this. So in here we go. So one of the largest groups with more than 117,000 members is run by at least 2 administrators whose personal profiles indicate they speak Indonesian and are based in Southeast Asia. They are tagged as digital creators. That's a bit of a giveaway. On their personal profiles, some of these administrators post images from Meta's back end. So that's if you're a digital creator and you've got a big enough page, Meta will pay you for your content based on how many eyeballs your content attracts, because Meta wants to keep people on the platform. If you're making popular content that keeps people on the platform, you're making them money. They will share the ad revenue with you. These people will share the photographs from Meta's back end, including charts in Indonesian that show the content is popular in Australia. Others show their Facebook earnings based on views on their content and lament slow months. So clearly these people are in the business of monetizing eyeballs on Facebook. They don't live in Australia. They speak languages other than English. They may well speak English, but they speak languages other than English. And this is clearly all about the money for them. One creator who has posted content about whether the burqa should be banned in Australia shared a screenshot in Indonesian showing that Meta would pay $20 for 2 posts that reached 50,000 people. So, and it's just a lot of the poll bait, and this is really important. So these pages that just throw up a question, they'll have an image and they'll throw up a question. Was Pauline Hanson right to scold this journal, is the example they give, or should Sharia law be banned in Australia? These people are not adding value. These pages are not adding value. They are harvesting your eyeballs, your likes, your comments, and the fact that you've liked and followed their page. And they're not actually helping One Nation at all. They're not. So then you've got reactive posts, and look, the article's actually quite good. But I want to, so that, you know, the found pages, 2 accounts that were of another pro-Hanson Facebook group with almost 40,000 followers appear to be based in India. Before posting Australian-centric content in recent months, they shared content in Hindi on Indian political topics, as well as the occasional selfie, and they contact and offer contact details for brand promotion. Then you've got, there's one down here I want to get to. Okay, so this is the honest take. All right, so Crystal Aberdeen, a professor of internet studies at Curtin University, told Guardian Australia, for a lot of the Southeast Asian meme factories, that's what they're calling them, the politics are entirely divorced from the profit making. They are for hire. Again, this is the honest take. This is not what other people are now claiming. They're taking this research and they're making all kinds of other claims about how it is a disinformation campaign, how there's no real support for One Nation. It's all just paid bots. No, the research didn't say any of that. The research said that One Nation are so popular online as a topic that it's become financially lucrative for these people to topic jack One Nation, even completely dishonestly. We've also seen fake polls coming out. Be really careful with polls, guys. In the last week, while I've been here in the US, in the last week and a half, I've seen a bunch of fake poll results come out claiming that One Nation had spiked to 40%, 45%, blah, blah, blah. Absolute nonsense. Those polls don't exist, but they got massive engagement online. So these people have an incentive to lie. But I want to get to one more thing. An administrator for one group, One Nation Supporters Australia AU, which I've seen online, which has more than 135,000 members, one of the administrators purports to be federal MP David Farley, who won the Farrer by-election in early May. I can tell you, I know David personally. He is not across social media, right? This guy's not running any of these pages. The account, which was only created on 30th of May, uses photos taken from a Facebook page used for Farley's campaign, but spruiks a financial scheme, here we go, that advises people to withdraw their assets from crashing banks and invest in cryptocurrency instead, as well as sharing AI-generated images in support of Hanson. So you understand, this is real. It's happening. Yeah. Many people watching this show will have seen this content. Many might even be members of some of these groups, but it's not proof that the support for One Nation is fake. It's proof that the topic of One Nation is so popular that it's a better topic than any of the other ones out there for these digital creators to cynically monetize. That's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple of things. This is not quite One Nation related, but Emily from Voice of Victoria, she pointed this out. So, you know, the red shirt scandal from, I'll bring up Em's stuff because she wrote the.
Well, she deserves a shout out anyway. She does good work.
Let me just grab this one. Share this tab instead. Okay.
Now, so speaking of shout outs, I'm gonna bring up Ozpoll 6 because we're going to talk about the polls soon. So I'll get that ready.
So this is in Victoria, same kind of thing. So obviously when it comes to spending taxpayer money, everything must be recorded, right? And there must be official channels.
And
And
rightly
M
so.
has discovered this. So sorry, let me just get it in front of me. So this is a new Instagram page called Good Shout Vic, and it's basically fake podcast. So I'm going to bring up the channel. This is it here. So we've got Jacinta Allen talking to a camera. Ready?
When they're filling up at the service station, how the conflict in the Middle East has just pushed fuel prices up. And in understanding that that puts pressure on household budgets, the government needs to step in and help. And I'm determined to use government to help working people and families, which is why 20% off car rego means families can get up to $186 back off each vehicle and back into their household budget.
So
Damn.
and
Damn.
like how bad is it? Let's watch this one.
Big. It's huge. And it's providing people with roofs over their heads, a $5.3 billion initiative to substantially increase our social housing stock. The Regional Housing Fund was...
So this is propaganda. This is taxpayer.
That's AI
propaganda.
done right. They've generated those AI voices off a human voiceover. They haven't generated that off text prompts. They've done that. They've put some effort into that.
Do you think? I think it's them just reading off a teleprompter. I don't know if it's AI.
So you think that person really is actually? So okay. Sorry, you're going. Okay, sorry. Now I'm catching up with where you're at. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me think that through then.
And then there's another one. So there's this page, Vic News Today, right? No official government branding, but very, very nice to the taxpayer. So again,
that Victorians are concerned about these matters, and I accept that my explanation needs to be really clear. So let me be...
They're talking about the big build. This is Harriet Shing.
As the complexity of care across our public system.
So this is literally state-funded propaganda. And now here's where the plot thickens. If we come over here, so this is a Victorian government website, vic.gov.au. This is their official social media list. So these are all the channels that are run by the government. If we come down to Instagram and we scroll down, none of these pages are on there. These are propaganda pages put together by the government that are not listed as official government websites.
What sort of views are they getting on that stuff?
They're low because they're brand new. So let's have a look at this one. I don't think I can see the views on the desktop, or maybe I can. Yeah. Hang on. Let's look. Here we go. So not many, 1,500, 2,100, 10,000 on this one.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about this is it says the latest from the Victorian government, and it's got a little logo and whatnot. This is what they're doing with our taxpayer money. They are building fake Instagram pages, and I'm sure there's Facebook versions of it as well. And you've long suspected that the GERC might be one of those as well. And so this is where things are at now.
The GERC is not purporting to be, these sort of podcasts, right?
The GERC is just a version of, what was his name on X? PR guy.
Oh, Chrissy Dan, fan of these sorts of people. Let me hang on.
These are propaganda pages.
So my head went to, there's no way that these senior government ministers are going to spend their actual time sitting down doing fake podcasts for the sake of clipping and putting onto social media. They would never debase themselves that much. So they must have used AI to generate the visuals, but that's a really convincing voiceover. So they haven't generated the voiceover off text. Someone's actually read the text with intonation, and then they've then morphed that into the AI version of that person's voice. That made more sense to me as an instinctive assumption about what I was seeing. I'm just reflecting on that moment. Then that those people had debased themselves enough to show up to a studio to sit and talk to a non-existent podcast for the purpose of having that clipped and put onto propaganda social media. Okay, even if they did that and they put it onto actual official government channels, that's still pretty cynical. That's still a pretty poor use of their time. But to have that being clipped, they're showing up their recording, having it clipped for the purpose of putting onto a third-party channel that is brand new and is getting very few views. Like, I'm sorry, do these guys have like extra hours in the day that the rest of us don't get? Like, they're just looking for things to fill their time?
It's terrible, isn't it? And when you see that, I mean, it's easy for you and I and, maybe our savvy audience to see this stuff. We're a little bit more plugged in. But imagine just being your average Joe, right? Like people who aren't really paying attention, who aren't overly political. They might see those fragments of information and go, oh, that's a really good idea. Like what I loved, by the way, is actually, I have to show you this. I don't know if you saw this. Let me pull it up. This is
I
One
see
Nation.
everything. How dare you question? I see everything.
There's so much to see now, but
There is.
ever since the press club interview and whatnot, did Pauline put it on her own page? I think she did. So you know how Get Up made that photo of Pauline with the gangster glasses on?
Yeah.
So
Pauline's been using that as a profile pic. Yeah.
But I thought this was very funny. Where is it? God, where did I see it?
This is riveting podcasting, everybody. Let's just all look at Carly's face as she hunts around her screen for the thing that she lost.
She posts a lot, but maybe it was, basically, I can't find the reel. It was basically talking about how One Nation got all the donations from the people who got the kickback from the Rego refund. So all the people who
yes,
from the Victorian Rego scheme, they literally, and G did that too. He put his return onto One Nation. And then it was just a funny reel, or it's like bang, 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 all these clips of people saying that's what I did with my money.
Yeah, that is funny. All right, so let's move on from, so there's this whole scare campaign around, number one, either it's disinformation, foreign manipulation of our elections and social media, and we can prove it because all these pages have overseas admins. No, the truth is what the Guardian admitted, to their credit, it's actually just lucrative. Talking about One Nation is profitable if you're willing to be cynical about it.
Yeah.
The second big narrative around this is that One Nation are crashing out in the polls. And there's one of two reasons. Number one is because the Albanese's reforms are making housing more affordable, and people are realizing that he's got good economic management and blah, blah, blah. And the other one is that they're crashing because of a combination of Pauline Hanson's speech at the press club and Gina Rienhart's comments. Now, from what you said to me before the show, you correct me if I'm wrong, you seem to feel that the belief that it's Gina Rienhart's comments that is causing the crash seems to be quite strong. I'm not in Australia at the moment. I'm just kind of,
The backlash from that. So for those who don't know what I was talking about, Gina Rienhart was at a conference, and the clipped video was her saying that we should give land to Israel to come develop their military drones or whatever it was. Only that bit was clipped. And everyone is up in arms because you just even say the word Israel and people lose their fucking minds.
People start frothing at the mouth.
This is where I'm going to talk into the camera, because I'm so done with this petty behavior. Our side, the right, the center right, whatever you want to call us, those of us who have functioning frontal lobes, I need you guys to remember, just because you saw a clip on social media does not mean Pauline Hanson agrees with it, does not mean it's a One Nation policy. We're better than that, guys. Use your fucking brains. This is where it loses me.
But more than that, without... you're about to give the context. Give the context.
There was more to that clip. And I just want to preface it with this. We know this. We're better than this. And yet I see the reactions online and I'm like, guys, get your shit together. You're smarter than this. The full context of that clip was Gina Rienhart talking at a conference, and she was talking about the land we don't use in the fucking desert. And she was talking about how about we incentivize NVIDIA or Taiwanese chip building companies to come there, or SpaceX, so Elon can launch rockets from there, which, by the way, fuck yeah, I'd be there.
Yeah, good idea.
And then, of course, she said Israel doing their drones. So she actually said three countries, three nationalities, but everyone fixated on Israel. And this is where I lose my shit with people. I'm like, are you that ideologically captured? Can you not use your, sorry, I'm swearing. Can you not use your fucking brain to understand there might be a little bit more context to that? And also, Gina Rienhart said that. It was an idea. And occasionally, guess what? Sometimes we all have shitty ideas, and those ideas don't necessarily come to fruition.
Now, I'm going to say what she said in a completely different way, the way that I actually think it should be done, because I don't think land should be given to anyone. what we need to do is to either deregulate or create a permissive regulatory environment so that we become an attractive place for people to come and develop their technologies. Now, I've actually said this about flying cars and vertical takeoff and landing, EV tolls and these sorts of things. Air taxis as a mode of transport make more sense in Australia than they do in most countries. We have the wealth, we have high density cities that are difficult to get around, and we have medium distance regional centres where it's too long to drive, but it's not busy enough to be a major commercial route. Each of those contexts gives us, it creates Australia as a great test market for fully autonomous vertical takeoff and landing air taxis that basically go between approved landing sites. They helipad, think helipad, but they wouldn't have to be actually as serious as what helipads are. And we are a great continent. We are a perfect continent for all of that to be tested and developed. We have high-tech industry here. We would be able to attract talent to the country. If a company said, hey, we're moving our research and development to Australia, you're going to get to live in Australia while you work with us. Lots of foreigners would be very happy to come and live in Australia if we created a permissive environment for that. Now, Gina Rienhart is focusing on the wrong thing, which is let's give land away. Well, that's terrible optics, terrible economics. It creates perverse incentives instead of removing the perversion of incentives. So I completely disagree with her mechanism. But attracting high-tech industries to Australia, we have to, especially if we're going to have such ridiculously high cost of doing business. It's only the high-tech which have the high margins to be able to cope with our high cost of doing business. If we're not attracting them, then we've got nothing. We're attracting absolutely nobody. But my warning to everybody is, if you saw a page or a person being outraged about the fact that Gina said give land to the Jews, to Israel, and they didn't match that with outrage about giving land to NVIDIA or giving land to Elon Musk, then that is a page you need to be very, very wary of, because they don't actually care about the principle, right? If they were outraged about all three, you know what? Fair play. Okay, I agree. It was a terrible thought bubble. She should never have said it, in my opinion. It would create more problems than it solves. I'm right there with you. But if someone was only outraged about one of those three, I'm sorry, that is a really big red flag that I suggest you pay a lot of attention to.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I don't think it was a good idea either. But this is the thing that really annoys me about political discourse. This is the whole thing about the town square and putting things out there. Occasionally you say the wrong thing or you have a bad idea.
And even smart people are going to have dumb ideas.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. I don't think we should be giving land away for free at all. And I think it was a terrible look. And she shouldn't have said it. But it was said and it was not right. But, Pauline Hanson, they moved on it pretty swiftly. I think Malcolm Robbins came out and said, that's not our policy, that's not what we're doing. But my frustration falls on the people who automatically thought, because Gina Rienhart said it and Gina Rienhart's donating to One Nation, that Pauline Hanson was
this must be government policy.
Going to act on it. And this is what I mean. We're smarter than that, guys. We're smarter than that. Come on. And then, of course, that's why we've seen a dip in the polls, because people think that now Rennick's the only one left. And this is what I mean about crabs in a bucket. And it all correlates to the way that we consume discourse online now. Pauline Hanson's out. So we've lost the Jew haters are done. Pauline Hanson's no longer a consideration because of Gina Rienhart.
All 400 of them, yep.
And what pisses me off even more about this, and I got into an argument online about this, was I said Gina Rienhart's done a lot of good things for Australia. She has. That is
yes,
fact.
It's true. That is a fact, yes.
The 200 million for the veterans, it's upholding the Olympic team. They are good things. If all of a sudden this one statement she said about Israel means that all of that other stuff is immediately wiped, you're a fucking idiot. Sorry. If that's the 100%. Way you work, that makes no logical sense.
Yeah,
but
100%.
So now the online discourse is about how Rennick's the saviour. This is a guy who's not even in Parliament.
Yeah,
he has no sitting MPs. And we're like, and sorry, not we, the people believe Gerard Rennick is going to fix it. I'm sorry, this is illogical. There's momentum behind One Nation. If you truly want Labor out, this is the best shot at the moment. Not to say that something might not change in the future, but it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. This is ridiculous.
100% it is. Now, I want to go through a couple of the polls that have sparked all of this, but we need to keep in mind our frame of reference. Our frame of reference needs to be that in May 2025, barely 13, 14, what is it, 15 months ago? Barely 15 months ago, One Nation got 6.6% nationwide. That's our frame of reference. That is our starting objective data point. Now, you'll be horrified to know that they have collapsed down to 29%. Right? That is like, it's over. It's over. It was good while it lasted. We all dreamed the dream. We all drank the Kool-Aid. We all smoked the hopium pipe. But you know what? It must be over because they've crashed all the way down to 29%. When they used to be at 6.6. So, I mean, I don't see how they recover from here. And by the way, it's not just one poll. That was Redbridge Accent. This is the news poll. Has them crashing again down to 29%. And ALP, who, by the way, got more than 33% at the last federal election, they've risen to 33%. So obviously it's just completely over for One Nation. And he was the one that got all the tongues wagging. It was the third one of the trifecta. It was the Roy Morgan showing a disastrous result where the One Nation party collapsed all the way down to 26%, only managing to poll 20% higher than they did in the May 2025 election. So guys, this is conclusive proof that it was all a dream and that we all need to abandon ship and find somebody else to support. Now, I'm being facetious, of course, for anyone that doesn't speak Australian. Now, there's actually been a couple of polls since. I've only got one of them here, the YouGov. There's actually been another one as well that have actually shown One Nation support is holding. Now here they've actually got, the YouGov actually has them rising 2 points from their last result on YouGov up to 30. And the ALP, despite having rebounded up 3 points themselves, still actually trailing behind. This is what I've always said about polls. Well, firstly, beware of someone who interprets polls differently depending on whether they like the outcome or not, right? Look for someone who consistently says the same things. What I've consistently said on this show and others, you never take any individual poll as gospel, never panic over a single poll. You have to look at the trend, the shape of what's happening, the movement of what's happening, and allow a little bit of time and allow for some volatility. The margins of error exist for a reason. So what can we conclude from what we've seen? What I have said is, I believe what we're seeing is the low-hanging fruit has now been picked. One Nation have picked up an enormous amount of support over the last year. They were the people who were, in economics language, at the margins. They were the people who were already thinking about shifting, changing their allegiances. They were the swing voters of the modern, complicated political landscape. Well, once all of the swing voters have swung, things slow down. Now you have to start attracting the rusted on voters, the cynical voters, the completely disengaged voters. You're no longer, that low-hanging fruit has been picked. What I believe we're seeing here is evidence that One Nation's meteoric rise is going to probably flatten out considerably because the low-hanging fruit has been picked. Every single person they win from here on is going to be more difficult to win. Now, the nature in any market, periods of rapid movement often lead to periods of high volatility in both directions. And so you have a meteoric rise, you're often going to get an unstable period following that, and then it may stabilize after that. So I think we're going to see pretty volatile polling. I think we're going to see a mix of up and down polling, whereas for the last year, we've seen pretty much nothing but up. They've just been almost, not quite, but almost exclusively just relentlessly rising for a year. We've gotten used to that, and it's a nice feeling, but the low-hanging fruit's been picked. We're now going to start to see mixed results because that growth isn't going to be meteoric anymore. What this means, in my opinion, is if you believe, as I do, that we need One Nation to be the battering ram that breaks down the Uniparty's vice grip on Australian politics, well, we need to get involved. We need to help them because the work is about to get harder. The easy stuff's been done. So these polls, they're real. I'm not saying they're not valid. Are they influenced somewhat by the comments of Gina Rienhart or by Pauline Hanson's comments at the press club? Honestly, I don't think enough people are paying a lot of attention to those things for them to have had a big impact. But we've seen a bunch of hit jobs in the media. We've seen Albanese get his win with getting these reforms through for his changes to capital gains tax, etc. He's claiming a win because the auction clearance rates have collapsed, and he's saying that that's leading to first home buyers being able to buy homes. Well, by definition, if the houses aren't clearing, then no one's buying them. So I'm not quite sure how you conclude that. But anyway, I'll let a bit more data come out before I dive too deep on that one. But the combination of all of those things in the same 2-week period has led to mixed polling results.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Understand this. Everything worked against them in the last 2 weeks. They couldn't get a win as far as the media was concerned. I actually think Pauline did pretty well at the press club. But again, most Aussies most Aussies don't actually watch the thing. They just read about it in the newspaper. From the newspaper and the news cycle's point of view, they've had nothing but bad news for 2 straight weeks, and it didn't cause a collapse. It caused mixed results. And I think what that tells you is that they've found their new floor. Their new floor used to be 5-6%. Sorry, their old floor, excuse me. Their old floor used to be 5-6%. Their new floor today is 25 to 30%. And I think that's going to bake in. That's going to become a pretty solid floor for them.
I think with One Nation as well, like people get so, what's the word? It's like a sports team. You know, they're bandwagon supporters. So while they had the momentum and everyone was like, yay, yay, yay. And then they had this one little blip and everyone's like, oh, no, I'm out.
All the fair weather friends.
It's really silly. And I understand this is politics. I understand how this works. But my frustration is around the lack of depth when it comes to political discourse. Everything is so reactionary. Everything's highly charged, very emotional. And, you know, I mean, it's like that on both sides. It's not necessarily just a left versus right.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, you know, I've said this so many times before. I speak about this at length. We are in a class war now. It's no longer a left or right thing. I use those terms interchangeably because it's just easier for the conversation.
It's a shorthand. Yeah.
Yeah. But I wouldn't call myself right-wing at all by any stretch of the imagination. And the conversation I've been trying to lead people towards is, you know, we're seeing cultural Marxism is really taking over. And I'm sure you're aware what's happening in New York. And that's already happening here. There's already people talking about a lot of these things here. Albanese with a lot of his policies. A lot of this stems from cultural Marxism. And this is no longer a left versus right thing. This is a oppressor versus oppressed, or as I call it, producers versus consumers.
Sure.
That's where the argument is. A lot of the policies that Labor is now presenting are very progressive, but they are de-incentivizing people to produce, right? But they don't want producers. And there's a lot of this content now around, you know, eat the rich, tax the billionaires. And like, what you're failing to understand is all of those policies hit the middle class, the people who literally keep you alive. And, you know, just to kind of change the subject for a second, there's a lot of discussion around Marx once again, right? You know, I said cultural Marxism. I'm working on a video at the moment. I don't think many people understand who Karl Marx was. So I just, you know how I always like contrast it to today's standards? Karl Marx by today's standards would
are you going to show me another dick pic? Because I'm not sure that I can handle like another one of those.
No. So Karl Marx didn't bathe, right? They didn't have showers.
For those that aren't aware of the joke, dictator, a dictator picture is what I'm talking about. Just in case you're worried. Yeah.
So this is my next video in the Big Dick series is on Karl Marx, even though he wasn't a dictator, but I think it's important. But this bloke didn't bathe, right? So shower by today's standard. He didn't wash. He never left the house. And so by today's standards, he would be on my 600-pound life. That's where he would be. He
also mooched off his best friend's rich dad. I'm cutting your lunch. Go for it.
So this bloke, this Karl Marx guy who's like, I understand. And he was the precursor for Lenin and Stalin and all the communist ideas that have come since. Yeah. But this is a bloke who didn't bath, who didn't shave, who didn't take shower. He never provided for any of his kids. Most of his kids died from malnutrition, right? He never earned $1. They used to go to his parents and scab off his parents. And when they cut him off, they went to his wife's parents and scabbed off them until they cut him off. This guy never had a job. He scabbed off his relatives.
And then his mate's parents.
And then Ingalls came over and he scabbed off him. But the only reason Ingalls had money is because he inherited it from his industrialist dad. So Karl Marx, the guy who's saying that we shouldn't have inheritance, that people shouldn't be able to accumulate wealth, the only reason he survived so that he could write his stupid books was because of other people's wealth that he scabbed off. This is the poster boy for communism.
Have you read the letter his dad wrote to him?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good. It is savage. Like that is like you're going to end up sitting on a therapist's couch in your old age, telling him about the letter your dad wrote to you. It was, Yeah.
When you understand Marx, you understand why Mamdani won in New York. You've got the kids who voted, and I say kids because they're under 30. I'm showing my age, but most of them are overly educated Ivy League brats who live off their parents' money. Because the only way you can go to a Harvard or a Columbia or to
Trust
an
fund
NYU,
babies.
you have to have money. And I mean, you might have the odd scholarship, but they're few and far between. Most of these people, their parents are wealthy. They sponge off their parents. The only reason they have time to be activists is because they don't have to worry about paying their rent because their bills are being paid for. People who are honestly the proletariat or the working class don't have time to go and protest every day, let alone during the week.
Yep. All right. So we need to talk US politics for a little while. So are we done with the One Nation side of things? Okay.
Yes, but I very desperately need to go to the bathroom. So please introduce the topic whilst I take off my
Carlz wants to find any excuse possible to not have to hear me rabbit on about this. So I'm in the US right now.
Yesterday, so I'm already up to speed.
All right. So I'm in the US right now, and I was on Tim Pool yesterday, and I have to say it was very, I really enjoyed it. It was very, very interesting. Tim was visibly rattled by the decision that was made yesterday by the Supreme Court, yesterday US time, by the Supreme Court, regarding the definition of an election and by when do the votes have to be received. Now, this is all a bit technical. I'm not going to dive into the details. You can go to Timcast IRL on YouTube, watch the Monday US time episode. I was on that episode, and that's where Tim really breaks this down. And I think today's episode is going to be pretty equally savage because another Supreme Court decision came down today that I'll get to in a moment. But essentially what was at stake was the question of how long can a group of election officials keep waiting for votes to arrive in the post? And the reason this matters is because that window of time after the election day, but before they cut that off, that's what we've seen in Pennsylvania, famously in 2020, and as well as plenty of other places, where mysteriously these boxes filled with ballots that are all one way just happen to show up. And what that delay, what that lag allows time for, and potentially we've seen this in California again with the governor's race there. What that allows is for the votes to begin to be counted for the in this case the Democrats to gauge how much help do they need, and then to arrange that. And that's a very, very dangerous thing to have the opportunity for. Obviously, corruption is terrible in and of itself, but getting rid of corruption is not enough. You have to get rid of the appearance of corruption. And for as long as this lag, this window exists, it creates the opportunity for the appearance of corruption. And that's a huge problem, whether or not you believe the corruption is there or not. So what happened was there was a Supreme Court challenge that basically said the legislation that Congress has passed with regard to elections says that there's an election day. And we want the Supreme Court to agree that an election day means that the ballots have to have been received on that day. And the Supreme Court came down and said, by a very, very split decision, said, no, it means that the ballot has to have been cast on that day. And it can be handed over to the US Postal Service, and then who knows how long the US Postal Service needs to allow. It could be days, it could be weeks. The Supreme Court has no view on this. So in theory, if a governor wanted to be really cynical, or if an election administrator wanted to be really cynical about this, because this affects not only federal elections, but all the state ones, all the county, city elections, all the sheriff's elections, all the judge elections, they elect a lot of their own judges. By law right now, you could potentially say, well, we can't be sure that every single postal ballot has come back. I mean, we sent out tens of thousands of them. We've only received half of them back. So we're just going to keep on waiting. And you just never certify the results. Like in theory, I don't think anyone would be dumb enough to push it to that point, because they'd get themselves into a lot of trouble. And they would risk overturning the loophole. They'd risk actually having that loophole closed on them because they took it too far. So I don't think anyone would actually do that. But on paper right now, the Supreme Court has basically said there is no point at which you have to close the opportunity for more ballots to arrive. And that leaves open the opportunity for this sort of corruption. So the expectation was that they were going to come down and say, no, the ballot has to have been received by the end of the election day into an actual electoral receiving office, not into the postal service, which, by the way, is not certified to be involved in elections and is a federal agency. And all elections, including federal elections, are actually administered on a state-by-state basis in the US. So having a federal agency be a receiving agency when they're not certified to do so, and they're not actually a member, or they're not governed by the states themselves, creates other problems. And I won't go into any of that because, frankly, I don't understand most of it. But the expectation was that they were going to rule that the ballots had to be received by the electoral officials on the day of the election. And that was going to close all these loopholes. And that was going to probably mean that these midterms, along with some redistricting stuff, which I won't go into, there's quite a lot going on in US politics right now, that the US midterms were probably going to be a pretty good result for the Republicans. Despite the polls not actually being all that favorable, they could lose a few percentage points in the polls, but get rid of the corruption and they would still come out ahead. As things stand right now, the getting rid of the corruption is not happening. Maybe some of the redistricting is happening, but the getting rid of the corruption and the opportunities for elections to be stolen in the days and in, let's say, the week following an election, well, it's on. The Supreme Court has basically said, yeah, that's we're not going to tell you that you can't do that. Now, what I will say, and what I pushed him on a little bit, and he wasn't sort of in a mood to want to hear it, is that just requires Congress to pass another act. So what the Supreme Court was interpreting was not the US Constitution, it was the act of Congress that specified how it needed to be done. So that act of Congress can be amended. They can pass a new congressional act around elections that gets really explicit about exactly when and what and how long and and they can define that any which way they want to. And as long as they do that clearly and unambiguously, then the Supreme Court will change their ruling to match the new legislation. So this is not an unfixable problem, but it's probably an unfixable problem before the midterms, which are coming up in November. And if the Democrats know that this might be their last window for lots of corruption and lots of election stealing, you can pretty much guarantee there's going to be a lot of it, which means that the Republicans won't hold the House, which means they won't get the reforms passed through Congress, which means that the Democrats will be able to keep playing these games into the future. So Tim Pool was in quite a mood yesterday. He's not the sunniest of personalities to begin with. He does like his sort of post-apocalyptic views on the future. And certainly yesterday was no exception, but I can understand it. It's a pretty bewildering decision, and the implications, this could go seriously wrong for the US.
Well, I think across the Western world right now, with everything that's going on, this is happening in the West, it's happening in Europe, it's happening in Britain. These systems, to be clear, you guys know where I stand politically, but these systems must collapse, I believe, to restore public faith, to restore, some level of civility, to get us all back on track. Something needs to happen. The status quo cannot continue. So what does that look like? Does it look like consequences to bad decisions? Maybe. Does it look like vigilantism? Maybe. Does it look like, rioting? And, I'm not saying anarchy's the answer, but anarchy at this point does seem inevitable. And I mean, Tim Pool says this all the time, civil war, right? That's his favorite thing.
Yeah.
I don't want civil war. I don't want to see destruction, but it's already happening. It is inevitable. Yeah. And it's happening because of the consequences to poor policy making. I mean, we're about to talk about citizen vigilantism. But, when we look across to Europe and what's happening in France, for example, not just with the farmers and their protests, but regarding migration. Sweden is now looking to cut down migration. This is all happening simultaneously.
The EU Parliament has passed remigration laws.
Yes. And so this is all happening simultaneously. And what you have, best described is a tinderbox, right? Like, it's inevitable that something will set it off. What that thing is, no one knows. And I hope it's not horrible. But with the Supreme Court handing down those decisions, it says that people don't have faith in the Supreme Court now. Because when you look at how people voted, what they look like, was it the women who chose the votes? Now we're down into these aren't the right people. The Supreme Court shouldn't be able to decide. We're talking about systems that have worked for centuries in America, who are people no longer have faith in.
So the point that you just made, people can no longer have faith in the Supreme Court. So if Trump plays his cards right, he could actually leverage this moment and turn the midterms, sort of make back some of that ground in the midterms. So in the US, they do not have mandatory voting. And I think that that's actually a good thing from a principled standpoint. I don't think you should be forced to do anything you don't want to do. But pragmatically speaking, it introduces another variable into elections, and that is turnout. How enthusiastic is your support base? You could have a 90% support base, but if they all think that you're going to win in a landslide, so none of them bother to show up, then you'll get 0 votes. The other guy gets the 10%, which becomes 100% of the people who voted because your 90% just didn't bother to show up. So there's this enthusiasm issue. And midterms, where the president is not actually up for election themselves, typically get a much lower turnout than the presidential cycle. So you got every 4 years they're voting for a new president. In between that, in every 4 years, but offset by 2 years, you've got this thing called the midterms. So if there's a difference in voter turnout, voter enthusiasm in the midterms, it tends to lead to a bigger swing because the overall turnout is going to be lower, which means that if your people still show up in good numbers, it creates a landslide for you in the midterms. So how do you create enthusiasm? Well, tragically, the same way you create virality on the internet, fear. Fear is one of the most powerful political weapons to get people to show up and do things, in this case, to show up and vote. So if I was Donald Trump right now, and Donald Trump knows what he's doing with this stuff, so I fully expect that this is the campaign that will roll out. What you just said, who's going to hold these people accountable? Who's really actually in charge now? Like if this is the state of the country, how do we rectify this? Donald Trump can turn around and say, the Supreme Court is not going to stop this country from being overrun by illegals. So that was today's decision, but birthright citizenship for everybody, including illegals or tourists, what have you. If you manage to pump out an anchor baby on US soil, they are a US citizen. That was today's decision, which I'm sure Tim's had a lot to say about on his show tonight, but I haven't had the chance to see that yet. So the combination of these decisions by the Supreme Court, which are all split decisions, by the way. These are not overwhelming. These are not unanimous decisions. This is the Supreme Court divided against itself. So these are these are decisions that affect the lives of 360 or so million Americans. And ultimately, it's coming down to the decision of a single person. There's a single swing vote. And that individual is quite literally rewriting the Constitution of the United States of America on behalf of 350 million people. And a lot of people are rightly saying, hang on, this isn't what we thought, this isn't what civics taught us when we grew up learning about the American system in an American college or an American high school. Not that they do learn about it anymore, but back when they used to, they're sitting there going, hang on, this isn't the way this was supposed to work. So Trump's play from here is no one else is going to protect you. The Supreme Court is not going to protect your rights. They're not going to protect your country. They're not going to protect your borders. They're not going to protect the integrity of your elections. You need me to be the strong man to be able to ram through all the reforms that need to happen before my term as president is up. And I can't do that if the Democrats have a landslide in the midterms. Right? Now, that argument communicated to the existing Republican base. This is the thing, because of the enthusiasm gap. He doesn't need to reach new voters with this. He just needs to reach the existing Republican base, the people that have already showed up to vote for him once before. Reach them with that message, and I think he will generate an enthusiasm gap. That will resonate. The fear that will, I mean, I regret that this is true, but it's human nature. That will drive a turnout for Trump that I think could erase the couple of percentage points that he's lost in the polls over the last year. And potentially actually push him even further ahead, which means that he will hold Congress, he might take the Senate, and then he can maybe start to get some things done.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I've brought up the book, The Fourth Turning, before, and then the new version, The Fourth Turning, is now.
Drinking time.
We are in for another 5 years of difficult political environments. And I like I said before, a lot of these systems do need to burn down. What pops up in their place? How do we fix it? I'm not pretending to have the answers, but
sorry, is that because Aquarius is in Uranus? Is that what's happening? That was all that stuff? Yeah, okay.
That too. Well, I mean, you look at the French Revolution, right? And what happened there, and the American Revolution, you know, Americans went to war over a 2% tax rise. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we're talking
3%. Like, it was pretty outrageous. Yeah.
You know, and now we're having our very values being eroded, being told that everything that we know to be true, everything that we value is needs to be destroyed and burnt down.
Yeah.
And people seem to be so placated by it. They're
Yeah,
like,
so
oh,
blasé about it.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
whatever.
crazy. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
Vigilante. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
you know.
So
Sorry.
So I want to sort of wrap that topic up. I need to stop soon because I'm keeping the kids awake. They've joined me in America, and which is wonderful, but they're meant to be sleeping and they are not.
Well, we need to get to the citizen vigilante.
Yeah, no,
movie.
we need to get to that, and I'm not going to have much to say on that for obvious reasons because my girls are listening to me, and you know, so I'm going to let you carry that one. But I want to wrap up the U.S. Supreme Court thing. The decisions I think are terrible. I think Trump is smart enough and light enough on his feet as a political campaigner that he is going to turn that into political capital, and the end result might actually be really quite good. I said in a post I think earlier today that those the progressives who are celebrating the Supreme Court's citizen birthright decision that came out just today, just a few hours ago, the progressives that are saying, yeah, that's a really good thing, be careful what you wish for. Don't celebrate too hard too soon, because if Trump plays his cards right, and I fully expect he will, beg your pardon, that is going to be a phenomenal political weapon that could literally determine the outcome of the midterms.
All right, so let's talk about this movie, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm happy to talk about the Streisand effect side of it, but I'm not going to talk deeply about the philosophical questions that it raises, just because kids.
Yeah, so let me just pull up the actual thing. I had it here somewhere. Where is it? While I grab that. So I watched it with G. We watched it via X. So those who want to watch it, you can watch it on X. It's on Elon Musk's.
So there will be some people that have been hiding under a rock and they won't know what the it is in that sentence.
Yeah, I'm just bringing it up. So hang on. Citizen Vigilante. There it is. So it's a film directed by, let me pull up this. I'll just bring you the whole thread. Hang on. It's a film that stars Armie Hammer, the cancelled actor. And it's basically around a vigilante who takes justice into his own hands, and it all stems in Europe. He's an American citizen who's working in Europe, and he takes justice into his own hands, and very violently. So this is the movie poster. You may have seen this floating around on social media. So a couple of things. Was it a great movie? I'm going to say no, as in cinematic, great dialogue, suspenseful. No, it was very B grade, but it wasn't just that it was B grade. I think it sort of speaks to where Hollywood production is at now, or movie production is at now, where I felt like I was a dog on a lead being walked through it. The dialogue was so simple. There was no tension. There was no suspense. There was no, my mind wasn't doing the work for me.
It was a Jason Statham movie, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I would put it up there with anything that's been made post 2020, bar a handful. One of my favorite movies of all time is Seven. I love a psychological thriller. I love being walked through. I don't love gore. I'm not a gore person. I love implied terror, and I like letting my imagination run. Sorry, go.
No, that's a great point. And I want to talk more about that in a minute, but I was just thinking about Seven. Obviously it's the head twist. Have you seen Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die?
No.
I watched it on the plane, and I might have been a few bottles of cheap, nasty aeroplane white wine in, so that might have colored my perception of the film a little bit. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I do recommend it. If you're someone who likes having your head done in, I won't use the expression because my kids are within earshot, but if you're someone who enjoys having your head done in by just what now? I really enjoyed it. It was good fun. I laughed a couple of times, and it had that kind of mind-bending thing going on. Anyway, back to this one.
So I'm going to read Douglas Murray because he kind of sums up how I feel about it, right? So this movie, so we're going to talk about the Streisand effect. It popped up, and the film classification people in Germany refused to classify it, which means it cannot be commercially promoted. So without an M rating or an R rating, you cannot promote a film. And so that was their way of censoring it, essentially. And like everything these days, the more you tell people they can't watch it, it exploded. And so Elon
How have they not figured this out yet, honestly?
because they don't have functioning frontal lobes. You're going to hear me keep talking about it. This is important. Your prefrontal cortex is the most important part of your body. Anyway, so these people, tried to ban it. So, of course, naturally, social media got wind of it. It went viral, and then Elon Musk posted it on X and made it free for everyone to watch.
In full. Posted it in full on X. You can just click, you see it in your news feed, click on it, and there it is. There's the whole movie.
Yeah. And that's how we watched it. We've got Apple TV, so I literally just connected it to the TV and it played on our big TV so we could watch it. Good quality, all that sort of stuff. It's not like a cinema camera back the old days when people used to and as far as like if you're hoping for a cinematic masterpiece, that's not why you're watching it. I looked at it and went, for someone who's not necessarily paying attention to what's going on, who's not chronically online, like say yourself and me, that movie would be shocking. But to you and me, I'm like, yeah, that's inevitable. I see that coming. So sorry, go.
Sorry. Well, this is the problem that they've got now, is when something like that happens in real life, and we're going to talk in a minute about some examples where there are some things happening already in that direction. When something significant actually happens, the powers that be are going to turn around and say, well, Armie Hammer, the director, the writer, whoever financed the film, etc., they are going to be in the crosshairs, not necessarily metaphorically either, for whatever crimes may be committed in the future.
Well, and that's the thing, right? So they're saying it's dangerous. It's going to inspire people to do acts of retribution. And so the opening scene, just to sort of paint the scene, and I know you can't talk about it because you've got your kids there.
Yeah,
but
I got my headphones on, so you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, so it opens with a very European-looking woman, blonde, white, with her young child. They walk out of a supermarket, and she gets stabbed in the throat by an African migrant. That's the opening scene. And it's unprovoked. It just happens. Now, you and I and those of us who are chronically online, we know this is happening. We've seen the almost beheading of someone in Belfast. We've seen the stabbing of Henry Nowak. We've seen all of these things, right? Like, and it's everywhere. We've seen the machete crime in Melbourne. We know what's happening. We know what's going on. We know about the rape gang crisis in the UK. We know about the migrants who just the other day, a man was bashed to death in France by African migrants. Yeah. And so this movie centers around an American man who carries out vigilante-style attacks on not only the perpetrator, but the family. And so I'm giving it away, but I understand not everyone's going to watch it. It is really gory, unnecessarily so, which kind of annoys me because I'm like, I feel like that's a gimmick and it's a bit of a cheap trick, but maybe you're into gore. But there's this one scene where, and I mean, this one hits close to home because we know this is real. So a group of young Muslim men gang rape a 14-year-old white girl, right? And we know this is real. We know this is happening. And they don't necessarily show the rape. They just show bits of it, enough to fill in the gaps. And anyway, so he goes to one of the boys' houses where he's sitting with his father. And this is exactly what we know happens. The father's like, he's a young boy. He didn't know it was bad. You know, he's traumatized. We came here. And there's a moment where Armie Hammer, the vigilante,
the character,
we're not importing our best. In fact, we're importing our worst, and we've been forced to live with it without consequence and all this sort of stuff. And he gives this bit of a sermon. And then he makes the kid, he shoots him in the knee, firstly, so he's in pain. And then he makes the kid invite all the other men to the house. He's like, get them here now. And he threatens to shoot the family. And then the young girl, the daughter of the same family, or the sister, says, he says to the sister, you posted Facebook messages about how these girls deserved it. They deserved to be raped because they were wearing skirts or something. And she goes, oh, I'll take it down. I'll take it down. And then she gets triggered and she goes, well, they do deserve it. They're disgusting. It's haram or whatever. And then he goes to shoot her, and the mum and the dad are like, wait. And then the two other guys come in, he shoots them, and then so on and so forth. And so, you know, for those who don't want to see the movie, basically he kills everyone. And then the European police try and come in, and obviously they don't want a vigilante.
Yeah,
and
of course.
He shoots them, and it just keeps going. And the whole thing about the movie, why it's dangerous, is, if there's a lone wolf out there who thinks, oh, I'm going to be the vigilante, sure, it might inspire someone. But what gory movie that exists today isn't inspiring someone? I mean, we've already got ISIS attacks, you know?
Well, can I make a comment that this genre already exists.
Yeah.
Probably not in as confronting a form and not released in as delicate a moment, but consider movies like Law Abiding Citizen.
Yeah.
Right, this is an individual who goes to extraordinary lengths to target the establishment. Think about Man on Fire. This is one of my favorite movies. Denzel Washington, Man on Fire, washed up alcoholic, ex-military, goes and gets a job bodyguarding someone, a rich couple's daughter down in Mexico. The daughter gets targeted in a kidnapping that was actually an inside job. And then he just, a switch flicks in his head and he just goes into burn it down mode. And of course, Mexico, genuinely very corrupt. And so he has to deal with a lot of corrupt police officers, a lot of layers in order to get to the girl that he swore he would protect, and to rescue her. And what I love about that is the movies is what you said earlier, Carly, is that they didn't feel the need to show everything. You knew, but they didn't feel the need to show you. And it makes it so much more powerful. And I think, a movie like Citizen Vigilante would probably have benefited from perhaps a different director who made different creative choices that just didn't feel the need to show you everything.
And I think this is where I kind of get a little bit offside with people on our side of the fence who go, all right, I'm going to produce something, I'm going to make something. They make it so obvious that it's a counter, right?
Yeah.
And what that does is it just continues on the polarization. I mean, I put up a reel about the rape gang crisis. I read the report from Rupert Lowe. And what was interesting is when the left responded to it, they were like, there's grammatical errors, this isn't empirically reviewed or whatever. And they dismissed it and they laughed at it. Like there's literally videos of women laughing and mocking this report. And my reel, I said, it doesn't matter if it's one girl or 20 or 2,000 or 25,000, 25,000. It's irrelevant. One girl being trafficked and raped is horrific. And all that number does, the differentiation between whether it's 2,000 or 250,000 is how prolific of a scale and how big the cover-up is.
He could be 99% wrong and we should still be horrified. Nobody should be laughing. And this is what's lost on them.
And so when you see that cavalier response from, again, I'm using left or right just to make the conversation simple. When you see that reaction from the left, you go, they don't care. This is genuine. And like the thing with the rape gangs, right? The magnitude of it is the thing that people are still debating. How big it was, how long it went on for, who was involved. That's what people are arguing about. It is undeniable that it happened.
Yes. Yes.
So when people dismiss it because of, they're like, it's hyperbole. I'm like, but hang on, no, it really did happen. At what scale? That's the variable. But you're laughing about these young girls getting raped. That's the attitude that the Muslim migrants have, by the way.
To bring it right around full circle, the crime of Karl Stefanovic was to interview the person who stood almost alone at the very beginning as one of the only people actually willing to name the unnameable. And now even having a sit-down interview with that man, now that it is acknowledged and known that he was right, I think in the specifics as well, but even if not in the specifics, he was right in principle. You can, again, people can argue about the scale and the scope and the individual, what did or didn't happen, but that it was real and is real is now undeniable. And yet interviewing him will get your contract with a mainstream network in Australia cancelled. That should send a shiver down all of our spines.
It should. And look, I don't want to keep talking about Citizen Vigilante, but I do want to show you a couple of things because we're already seeing examples. So if you guys want to watch the movie, you can go and get it on.
Well, you can watch it on X.
But I do want to show you, like, for those who fear that vigilantism, it's already happening. So I've got some examples. So let me bring up the first one. Where is it? Oh, God, there's so many things. Okay, so naturally, you brought up The Guardian before, and you're like, they wrote a good article.
Which is surprising for them.
Mehdi Hassan has written his thing, and does anyone seriously think this kind of amplification is harmless? And he's talking about how Elon Musk platformed it, and he's saying it's terrible, and it's going to increase racism, and it's going to inspire attacks on migrants. And like, as opposed to the ones that are already happening, as opposed to the crime from the migrants on the national citizens.
Yeah.
Apparently
But
that
you
doesn't
and I said, and we originally were saying it in the context of the Victorian crime crisis, but it is true universally.
Yeah.
When the powers that be that said, hey, no, you don't go out and get justice for yourself, you hand them over to us, we will make sure that justice is done. You know, you don't need weapons, you hand them over to us, we will protect you. Well, when they fail to make good on both of those things, the protection and the justice, it is inevitable that sooner or later people will take matters into their own hands. This is a baked in part of the human pie. This is a part of human nature. And the longer it goes on that the authorities do not fulfill the obligation that they have promised to fulfill, they put that obligation on themselves. And the more egregious, the more they fall short, the distance by which they fall short. That is what will determine the speed and the savagery with which people will begin to take matters into their own hands. I'm actually, quite frankly, amazed that we don't see more such incidents. Now, I don't want to see them. I want to see the authorities step up and actually do what they promised us they would do, hold these people accountable so that it's not necessary for anyone else to take matters into their own hands. But for as long as they are not doing that, things like what you're about to show us here are going to increase. That's not a good thing, but it is a fact.
Yeah. So this is the first one that I thought I'd bring up. Now, I'm on the fence about this. There's been some AI footage as well around this, and
This is where it gets very complicated. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those who are listening, not watching, a Scottish man went on a stabbing rampage. He didn't kill anyone. He just stabbed 5 Muslims.
Yeah. So can I make an unequivocal statement here? I'm not on the fence with this one. This is not okay. This is why I bang on endlessly about needing to treat people as individuals, because the minute you reduce people down to the group within which they belong, then you are tempted to take vengeance on the group. The problem is, almost invariably, you are going to target the wrong individuals within that group, and 2 things happen. Number 1, you're now committing an injustice of your own. Now, in the case of a movie like Citizen Vigilante, he's going and finding the specific individuals responsible. Depending on the circumstances, I'm not necessarily against that. But going and finding members of the group by which you defined the people responsible is completely immoral. Secondly, you instantly lose all sympathy. You instantly lose the argument the minute you start engaging in these sorts of random acts directed against groups, as opposed to, take, for example, there have been instances here in the US. I was actually having a conversation with someone just the other day where fathers have gone and taken extremely violent revenge against people who had committed specific crimes, and again, I'm choosing my words carefully, against their children.
Yes.
And in many cases, that action was terminal. And those people got acquitted by juries. Juries would not hold them responsible. They said, yeah, you did the right thing, because they knew that the individual was held accountable, right? Not some group.
There was a story in Britain, I think like 3 weeks ago now, of a child predator or a child killer, was admitted into prison in Britain, and 3 lifelong inmates took him out.
Yep.
The trash. And what's interesting, when you read the comments, people are like, how do I donate to his commissary? How do I send it to you?
Yeah, exactly. But the minute you turn around and you say, right, the people who are the problem belong to this group, therefore I will just target random members of that group, even if they're not the individuals who are causing the problem. 1, you are now morally wrong. You are now engaging in an act of terrorism. And 2, you are going to lose all sympathy for your cause instantly, and rightly so. So what we're about to talk about here, this guy in Scotland, no, he was completely wrong. Completely wrong to go ahead and do that.
I agree. And because he's completely wrong for a couple of reasons. 1, he's attacking people who weren't necessarily perpetrators, so that's morally wrong. But second, those kind of stupid, like, like rage is where you just go and lash out because you're so angry. They actually push us all back, because what it does is it gives the people in the opposing team justification for stronger censorship, for stronger crimes against people speaking up on social media.
And it gives them victim status.
It does. So it's actually not helpful to us. It actually hinders us. So, but I want to show you something that I do get around, because I get around stuff.
All right, give me some good news.
This. So this is Mexican Batman. Have you heard of this story?
I've heard about this guy. This is so good.
So he is hunting down thieves and duct taping them to poles. So here's some examples.
which is so
basically,
great. Can you expand any of those or zoom in or anything?
zoom in. Is
There we
that
go.
any better if I do that?
Get rid of that. Yeah,
So
little. That's a bit better. Yeah, there we go. Ah,
stupid ads.
have you been
Go away.
searching for gym equipment recently? Come on, at least it's not Merkins.
I may have bought a home gym. I may have done that.
Okay. All right.
Anyway,
So for those that are listening, we're looking at photographs of a hapless dude who's been very securely duct taped to a pole, standing next to a scooter. And I read this story, but it was I don't clearly remember it. I believe the scooter he's standing next to was one that he had stolen.
no, so they're motorcycle bandits. So what they do is they ride around on these scooters and bikes, and they nick people's phones. They grab their handbags.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
they're thieves, right? And so I've got him on screen there. There's an example of one of the guys. And so, then he's in, you know, how many times have I said on this podcast, we need to shame people? Humiliation.
That's great. That's
so this
so
is it.
good.
This is Mexican Batman.
Oh, he's wearing a cape and that's so good.
So basically what he's doing is he's just taking into his own hands. These are petty thieves, right? There's another example.
What level of intimidation do you have to have achieved to have two people obediently stand with their backs against a pole while you duct tape them? Like, what level of fear has he accomplished in their little minds?
So he bashes them and he scribbles on their faces and then he ties them up and he leaves them there, and obviously someone cuts them down. But this is no different to the stocks back in the 1700s?
Yeah.
They put you in the stocks with your hands in your head.
Okay.
And you'd be humiliated.
But we need him to go to that one more step. I'm going to really push my luck here. That inglorious bastard step of just carving a symbol into their forehead so that they can never get away from their crimes. It's just literally etched into their head. But I mean, honestly, how good. This is literally, I don't know if girls are the same. Every teenage boy, and quite frankly, every single man as well, secretly wants to be this guy. This is our ultimate dream. Running around, catching crooks and duct taping them to poles whilst wearing a Batman mask and a cape. Are you kidding me right now?
You remember the TV show Arrow that came out 2010s?
Yeah.
That was all the same thing. You know, he was a vigilante.
Yeah.
But here's another example that I get behind. So this is a man who has a huge Instagram account now. He's called Pickpocket London. And I'm just going to play you one reel.
I haven't seen his stuff for a while, but yes.
Rouba. Yeah. Come here stealing. Yeah. Don't come here stealing people. Don't come here stealing people. Yeah. Don't come here stealing people.
So these are pickpockets. There's a really good one he put up the other day. Where is it?
You in the pickpocket! Fuck you, motherfucker!
You stupid! You don't have nothing! No, you are a thief!
Don't do it! Don't do it! Oh shit! That's a pickpocket couple in London getting arrested after a long career of stealing from innocent people on the streets.
No stealing today, yeah? No stealing today.
Pickpocket! 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 Pickpocket!
You're gonna come for the police.
You guys get the gist. But this is the kind of vigilantism I can get behind. Absolutely.
Okay, honestly, this is probably really bad of me, but that's the housing inspections dude. He's just with a different career choice.
Yeah.
They're twins. They're blood brothers. They just picked a different career path. Yeah, site inspections. That guy, right?
Yeah, but this is that's a good way to deal with it because everyone can get behind that. You know, it's not you're not shooting them point blank with a silencer in a apartment.
And there might be some argy-bargy in there, but you kind of like, it's still kind of proportionate. Like it's not over the top. Now, mind you, for this
violence, as in like, you know, you've made this comment before as well, like with the youths, like put them in hospital for 6 months.
Yeah, correct, yes. You know? But I say that in the context specifically of the ones who are recklessly and just maliciously for their own entertainment committing violent crimes.
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't advocate that for a pickpocket, but I would absolutely advocate that for the people involved in machete fights and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's an important moral distinction there. But I think the guys like this Mexican Batman, guys like that, we do need to see more of this, because the tragic reality is that police officers, well-intentioned though they may be, they cannot be where we need them to be. They are completely under-resourced. The government has facilitated a massive crime wave of a very violent nature, and at like what has to give? At some point, we have to acknowledge that failing to deal with this problem is actually a betrayal of our own wives and kids and ourselves. And, you know, speaking as a man, obviously in that case, like at some point, your loyalty to the people who depend on you for protection needs to trump your feelings about the perpetrators. Like at some point, that has to shift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're going to see that now with Jacinta Allen. So last story that I want to touch on before we go is, have you seen much of this since you've been in?
Probably not. I haven't. I've been in my own bubble over here a little bit. A lot of like Americans, you'll be surprised to hear this. Americans don't pay a lot of attention to anything outside of America unless it's a place that America is bombing. That's the exception. At that point, they'll watch the crap out of that. But if they're not bombing, I mean, if America started bombing Australia, then they would start to pay attention to Australian politics.
100%. So this is the CFMEU scandal, and it's bubbled up again because 60 Minutes, I'm just trying to see if I can grab their clip, 60 Minutes did a massive expose on it, and in joint investigation with the Age newspaper.
Ooh,
and so
interesting.
This was huge. It was like a 30-minute expose. So I'm just going to play you this little clip. I think it's this one.
Straight out corruption. This absolutely needs to be exposed. We've got the smoking gun.
You live in fear of speaking out.
A Nick Mackenzie investigation you cannot miss.
What do Victorians deserve, given what's going on?
They deserve nothing but the truth. Sunday on 9.
That's probably not the best one. I think it's this one. Here we go.
This absolutely needs to be exposed. We've got the smoking gun.
You live in fear of speaking out.
A Nick Mackenzie investigation you cannot miss.
What do Victorians deserve, given what's going on?
They deserve nothing but the truth. Sunday on...
There was a clip where they played Jacinta saying, you know, I'm being really transparent. And they literally stacked all these same press conferences of her saying the exact same thing. Yeah. And so essentially since the story broke, nothing's changed. So Mick Gatto is basically the guy, the fixer, and he's getting paid, and he's still getting paid right now today for people to get the big bills.
This is around, so there was one example, I think there was an escalator company that had $12 million paid to them that's completely unaccounted for. They didn't do any work for that money. Is that the nature of what's being discussed here?
So no, it's worse than that. It's that you have to get onto the site, you've got to pay Mick Gatto, and that goes into the fee. The taxpayers paying Mick Gatto's fee. So he's basically extorting taxpayers.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's definitive, like it's proven, there's bank statements. It's corruption of like, it's so obvious, so bad, so egregious, and yet Jacinta Allen still has her job. Jacinta Allen is, you know, deflecting as she continues to do. And this one, I think, will be the thing that sinks her. I mean, there's so many things that should have, right? But we've got a bit of a campaign going. I won't say who and how and why, but we've got a campaign called Find the 15, right? Find the 15 billion.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's pissed people off, as it should, obviously. That goes without saying. But this seems to be something that the Labor Party can't get in front of, and neither are journalists letting it go. And they are being particularly aggressive to Jacinta at the moment, in a good way, holding her accountable. She keeps deflecting. She keeps trying to, you know, spin it and refer it to the police. We did. Nothing's happened, you know.
But she's not going to step down because no one's going to be willing to drink that poison chalice, not 5 months out. Not 5 months out from the election. She was installed for the purpose of taking the fall. I stand by that prediction. When she was installed on the back of Daniel Andrews, I said this is the Kane-Kerner transition all over again. Kerner was installed to take the fall. Julia Gillard was installed to take the fall. Now she actually managed to win, but and then she got stabbed in the back. That's why Rudd came back.
Hang on, Julia Gillard never won a prime ministership.
Julia Gillard, I'm going to contradict you there. Let's Google that.
I'm pretty sure she didn't go.
She was installed did Julia Gillard ever win an election? Okay, no, she never won a general election as the head of the government.
Told you.
Okay, but did she? No, and she didn't do it from
No one voted
opposition.
for it.
So she lost. So she lost immediately. So hang on, when did Rudd come? Because it was Rudd Gillard Rudd.
It was Kevin 07, and he didn't do a full term. Julia
she stabbed him.
in his first term. And before
she
the next
won.
election, she got ninth again.
Was it before the next? So Rudd came back before the next election.
Pretty sure.
I mean, that matches what I'm seeing. Okay, that's wow. That's different in my memory. Okay.
She never won. So I'm just going to read this. This is from the ABC.
So she was re-elected in 2010, but you're saying Rudd was back to being the leader already. No, Gillard was. No, she retired. Okay.
The election.
Okay, I'm going to have to research that at a separate time. That's going to bother me. Okay, cool. Anyway.
Okay, so she said, Jacinda Allen says that her government has acted strongly to tackle corruption in the construction industry despite fresh allegations of criminal misconduct. And so what 60 Minutes and The Age uncovered was this money is going directly to outlawed motorcycle gangs. It's going directly to underground criminals. We are funding the lifestyle of these criminals. There's all sorts of violence and things that have happened. And yet she keeps backing her government. She's saying that, if there's any evidence of any criminal allegations, it needs to go to the police. And yet she's not willing to step in. They dismissed the Royal Commission into it. They dismissed an inquiry into it.
Mm-hmm.
And we know why, because, just to paint the clear picture, I'm sure you guys understand this, but that money is getting funneled back to Labor to help them win the next election.
Correct.
So just to paint this picture for people, because I think sometimes people don't follow all the way through. They get the fixes on. The CFMEU extorts taxpayer money that then gets donated via the CFMEU back to the Labor government so they can run their election campaigns.
Yep, that is their slush fund.
Yeah. So just so people know, that it's illegal, it's corruption, but it's happening.
So Jacinda Allen, I don't think will get rolled before the next state election. Do you reckon?
To roll her, she's got to go down with the ship.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think.
As well, I think she's wildly arrogant.
Oh yeah, but what does that mean for the Victorian election then? The Liberal Party are, they've got a new round of troubles. I don't want to go into it.
Just on that, I'm disgusted in that. I've lost a lot of respect for Moira over that. I'm really upset about that. I don't know enough. I only know what I saw in the news, but at this point, what I see is, and I really like Moira. I like her. I was on her side, but she's doing to Matthew Guy exactly what they did to her. It was completely blown out of proportion. And now we've had yet another Liberal Party scandal. Do you guys want Labor to win? At this point, it feels like you want Labor to win. If you can't put petty squabbles aside, if you can't conduct yourself in a manner that shows us that you deserve your six-figure salary of taxpayer money, I'm sorry, why are you in government? Are you just there to cause trouble? Do you stand for anything? Because I'm really pissed off.
I understand being pissed off. Let me push back a little bit, though. I think there's a couple of details that matter. As far as I'm aware, when Moira went to the police with that report, she had not seen what it looked like from the cameras. She was reporting.
There was footage.
Yeah, she was reporting on the basis of what it felt like as an experience for her in that moment. Now, things can feel a certain way and not look a certain way, and things can feel a certain way and not be a certain way. She's a woman who's carrying a lot of trauma from a lot of what she's been put through.
The Liberal Party have absolutely traumatized her, and
so
I think she's
having a trauma response. She's in a confrontation with one of the people who have contributed to that trauma. She gets manhandled a little bit, and it feels to her in that moment like it's at that level, and she goes and reports it accordingly. I don't think that that's an indefensible decision on her part. I think she would probably wish that she'd waited until she saw what it looked like from the camera, because regardless of what it felt like, what it looks like from the camera doesn't, I can't argue based on what we see in the evidence that the police are wrong to say there's no case to answer here. Like that, based on what we can see, That seems like a reasonable response.
Yeah.
So this is a really, really ugly situation. I said at the time, like, this is going to get ugly. I don't know whether I'm ever going to be able to find out the truth of it, because I don't know that, Moira's great and her husband, we talk from time to time, but would they tell me everything? I don't know if they would. I don't know if that's in their best interest to do that, but I do wonder, was she encouraged by someone to take it to the police? Was this a setup? Was she baited into this? I've got a lot of unanswered questions. So can I just say, I'm not going to join you in being disappointed in Moira. I think
it's not so much Moira, it's the situation.
The situation, definitely, yes.
And I don't pretend to know enough about what's happened, right? Like, and I'm not condemning one person over the other, but I look at it and go, you guys are so dysfunctional.
It's a mess, and it's a spectacular own goal at a time when we can't afford it.
And that's what I mean. I'm like, hang on a minute. I understand that you guys have got personal squabbles, and I understand that there's personality differences and there's bad blood there, but you guys are our elected politicians. You are in that parliament to serve the people, and it feels like you serve yourselves. That's how it feels to me.
Yeah, I think the tragedy of it is that Moira would have been an outstanding MP if she just hadn't been targeted by her. I mean that's why she was targeted, was because she had the potential to actually be a genuinely good leader of the Liberal Party and potentially a good premier, given another couple of terms to gain experience. Now she's been put through hell. Her workplace has been turned into a battlefield.
Yeah.
And who knows what twists in the tail may remain. I mean, will she turn around and, if they disendorse her, will she turn around and go to One Nation? Will One Nation want her? I don't know. I don't know the answers to any of those questions. I'm not going to speculate. That stuff's way too sensitive for me to want to do any speculation on that. But there may yet be some twists in this tale that sees Moira reach her full political potential. But at this moment in time, that pathway is far from clear. And if she never actually ends up in a really senior position in the Victorian government, I think that's going to be a real shame for the Victorian people. And
I agree.
The responsibility for that, I think, lies entirely with the Liberal Party and the fact that they are more interested in protecting themselves than they are in actually promoting competent people. And whatever mistakes may have happened in this case, I would still lay at the feet of the Liberal Party, because she's responded from a position of the trauma that she's been put through by them. And again, I don't actually know, but if it is a case that Moira has believed it to be much more serious than it was, and she's responded on the basis of that trauma, well, that's a really regrettable way for her political career to be harmed and potentially ended. But like I said, we don't know what twists remain in this tale.
Yeah.
But I mean, what a mess. What a mess. Oh, she's gone. Fantastic, everybody. I get to talk to you for another hour without Carly. This is great. This is going to be the best show.
I don't know what happened. I just got booted off.
It wasn't me. I mean, I liked it. I liked it. I was really happy about it, but it wasn't me.
I got booted off.
You were quick on the draw to get back in. I'm going to get conspiratorial that that was a sympathy play. You did it to yourself.
I was like, what is this? No, I just wanted to say, individually, I'm sure these people are actually quite nice people. And I think the game of politics is so ugly. It brings out our worst traits. We all have bad traits. We all have negative traits, but I think it exacerbates that. And then it's not a good reflection of who that person is, the way they think. And the thing with politics that really irks me is, like, we're in hyper-polarized times. We're in times where everything is sensationalized, everything's blown out of water, everything's disproportionate. And really, at the crux of it, you've got a public who are desperate for change, who want results. And no disrespect to Moira, I agree with what you said, but we don't have time for scandals right now. We really don't, and you guys in your political party need to pull your heads in and figure it out once and for all, but stop airing it in public, because right now what people want is solid leadership, someone who speaks from their full chest and also is willing to understand that, people are demanding change. And the problem with the Victorian election is right now there's still no One Nation leader. We don't know who the candidates are, and people are concerned about that. And there's, from what I can see, I'm obviously not privy to enough information, but it does seem like Victoria's kind of like well, it's too late. We don't have time for Victoria.
Look, I don't know. I have no inside information on that.
Yeah,
I don't think it is too late for them, but it was always a gargantuan task, and Victoria kind of being first cab off the rank. I mean, South Australia was, but Victoria getting that up, it was always going to be a tall order. So we'll see how they go. Look, I've got to call it. It's after 11 o'clock at night here, and I'm keeping my kids awake. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Do the Ko-fi thing, help us to keep going. Head to topherfield.com. Get the Oddcast merch as well as my merch. Help us to stay independent and to keep the model that we've got going, and keep an eye out for a huge restock of merch courtesy of Carlz, including some new designs.
Yep, absolutely. And guys, if you haven't yet, you're most welcome to jump into our Discord, keep the conversation going. Unfortunately, Topher and I don't pop in there a whole lot. We're trying to keep a show going, but if you want to continue the conversation with like-minded people, there's always the Discord. And on that note, I'm going to try and do another Monday show, but I just want to say this quickly. It is actually really hard. I have reached out to so many people to get them on the show. And anyone on the other side of the political fence is just no chance. I just wanted to address it because I keep seeing it in the comments. Guys, I've reached out to them all, trust me. And then there's a lot of people who also aren't really prepared to do an hour show. They're willing to do like a 10-minute, 15-minute stint, but so it has been quite challenging to find another co-host. But we've had Rukshan twice, and Rukshan, as he referred to himself, was my Uber podcast host. So
there you go. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I need to get to bed myself, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys in the next one. Don't forget to share the show, tell everyone about it, and we'll see you next week.